Welcome. This is December the 29th, 2023. I'm with my good friend and teacher, Pannobhasa in South Carolina. We're going to talk about some critical comments under my Bitchute video. My Bitchute crowd of comments is worse than Pannobhasa's people comment on his channel. So some of my people are saying Buddhism is commie chink bullshit or cringe. We want to justify the fact that Buddhism isn't necessarily some kind of leftist crack, and that it is one of the only Aryan religions left in existence. So Pannobhasa is going to talk more about that. So welcome, Pannobhasa.
Yeah, hail Brian. So yeah, you re-uploaded like the 1 year anniversary of us doing videos. I was still a monk at the time, and the comments was. I mean, about half the comments were just kind of making fun of the boobs in the thumbnails that you're going through a boob phase in your thumbnails, and then like a lot of the other people, I mean, they're just like talking about how Buddhism is cringe or it's like Satanism and it's just stupid and really it's like I would guess that most of them know almost nothing about Buddhism other than maybe just really superficial stuff that they might see somewhere, but I doubt that any of them who make comments like that have really looked into what Buddhism actually teaches.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these are Christians, so they give Christians a bad name because most Christians aren't that rude. Most Christians are quite nice people.
Yeah, well, I guess that there's like three main groups of people that would be making like really negative comments about religion. One would be the Christians who just think that if you're not a Christian, you're a Satanist and you're going to burn in hell. And then another group would just be like the atheists who think that all religion is bullshit, not just Buddhism, but all religions. It's like a really common argument that I come across sometimes is that all religions are just made up fairy tale crap that's invented by governments to control people.
Yeah, I hear that all the time.
Yeah. And then the third group would probably just be trolls who will just be like raging and sneering about anything. They don't care. They're just going to make fun of anything that you do a video about just to be on the other side. So, I mean, we can sort of address all of that simultaneously, I guess, just by pointing out that, I mean, Buddhism really is, it's a wisdom tradition. It teaches essentially how not to be miserable. That's like one of the central teachings of Buddhism is what is the cause of unhappiness and then how to cure yourself of that.
Yeah, and it's not about controlling people. You could argue that about the Catholic Church or Islam, that it is about controlling people, but not in Theravada Buddhism.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a few religious traditions that were started by essentially warlords who are saying, do what I say because I'm speaking for God. And then, they get people to follow along and attack whatever tribe he wants them to attack and all that. So, I mean, there are a few major religions that started that way. And there's a lot of cults, that never really amounted to much that also started that way. But yeah, I mean, something like Buddhism or even Christianity originally, what Jesus was actually teaching, they're teaching to renounce the world. They're teaching to go off into a forest or a desert and just, introspect and purify yourself, which I don't see how that's going to have anything to do with governments controlling people. It's just that, human nature is corrupt and you're going to have corrupt people who are going to be exploiting people's belief in a religious system or just the herd instinct to control people by using religion or politics or propaganda or whatever. But I mean, that's not what the Buddha was teaching. It's not what Jesus was teaching, just a bunch of made up stuff in order to control people.
Yeah. And also you made a good point that it's one of the few Aryan religions left. Most people think of it, a lot of people think Buddha was Chinese or think he's from India, but I was watching a video recently by Ajahn Sona, some of his news discoveries that the Sakya clan that the Buddha came from were of Iranian descent. So the Buddha may have been an Iranian and he had like blue eyes or like eyes.
Scythian, yeah. Like the Sakyas and the Sakas and the Scythians might all have the same etymology. Yeah.
Yeah. So for my audience, it would be good to argue that maybe Theravada Buddhism would be the most suitable Aryan religion for white people.
Yeah, I mean, you've got these people that, you know, they might be national socialists or whatever, and, you know, they're really down on the Hebrews and all that, but then they worship a deified Hebrew.
That's right.
Which is just kind of bizarre, really. You know, it's really too bad that, you know, all the Western religious systems, all the Indo-European religious systems in the West pretty much got wiped out by the intolerant hysteria of early Christianity.
Yes, good point.
Yeah. So, I mean, Buddhism is one of the last Indo-European spiritual traditions that still exists. I mean, all the European ones got wiped out, but I mean, Buddhism is Indo-European, even if it's not European. You know, Pali, the language in which the early texts were composed, is an Indo-European language. The Buddha himself was apparently Indo-European. And so, I mean, your only choice is really, if you want an Indo-European language, I mean, you've got like really conservative schools of Hinduism that still do fire sacrifices and chant the Vedas. I mean, that would probably be the closest you've got to, you know, really early Indo-European religion would be, I think it's called Mimamsaka. It's a school of Hinduism where they still do the fire sacrifices and do you know, sing hymns from the Rig Veda and all that. But aside from that, you've got Buddhism, and then you've got what's left of the Zoroastrian religion, like the Parsis, but that's been very heavily influenced by Christianity and Islam. So they're more of a, almost like an Abrahamic system now with monotheism and stuff.
Oh yeah, there's pre-Abrahamic.
I don't know if they would be if it was before Abraham, but it was before Islam took over the Middle East.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, there's one guy who was saying that anyone who doesn't worship God is a Satanist, or who worships idols. In fact, I heard on a radio show, it was like a Christian radio show where you had this preacher saying that the Buddhists worship a fat, lazy God, because they're thinking of the Hotai,
Yeah,
you know, like
Hotai.
those Chinese, you know, the laughing Buddha with the big belly, who wasn't even a Buddha. You know, he was just like a Chinese monk who got turned into like the Chinese version of Santa Claus. And really, another time, there was a person on Breitbart in the comment sections. I troll Breitbart comments sometimes, and they're talking about how Buddhists are Satan worshipers because, you know, all the mantras that they recite are just the names of demons, and then they twist their body into weird positions. Because I mean, this person couldn't tell the difference between yoga and Buddhism. You know, they're contorting their body into weird positions to make it easier for the devils to get in and all this stuff. And I mean, she just probably got told that by some preacher somewhere and just started repeating it. And they know almost nothing about Buddhism.
Yeah, it's negative karma to be, you know, criticizing wise people, good people, these preachers. So it's negative karma for them. And I just responded to that Bitchute comment you're talking about today by saying that we don't even have the concept of worship in Buddhism. They think we're worshiping statues, we're worshiping idols. Yeah, so the ignorance is something we have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I have bowed to Buddha statues several times, not very often, because I think maybe I was a Christian in a past life and had this thing against idolatry or something.
Well, I bow to Buddha statues. You know, that's veneration. I don't worship idols.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, every time that I bowed to a statue, I knew full well that it was just a piece of marble or, you know, brass or whatever. You know, it wasn't really the Buddha sitting there. There was no spiritual power just built into the statue. It's just a statue that's just a symbol representing the founder of the spiritual system.
Yeah, and even if it was the Buddha, like we venerate the Buddha, we pay our respects. We don't actually worship him like a god. And it's not like Jesus, the Son of God. We're not worshiping Jesus. We don't worship the Buddha. We don't have that idea.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of like traditional Buddhists, like Asian Buddhists, they really do worship the Buddha, and especially Mahayana Buddhists. You know, they've turned the Buddha essentially into a god. So, I mean, they worship Buddhas. Not even just Gautama Buddha, but you know, these other mythological Buddhas, they're worshiping those too.
Yeah, it's good to point that out, but as Theravada Buddhists, we don't agree with the Mahayana, at least in that respect.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, I mean, before you like criticize something, I mean, it's a good idea to at least know what it is that you're criticizing. You know, like I'm not a Christian. I've never been a Christian, but I've read the whole Bible from cover to cover more than once. And
Wow.
just about everybody should read the Bible, just at the very least, so you know what it is that you're rejecting. And it's the
When I
same way.
read
I
it, I
mean,
get kind of bogged down in stories and fighting, and it's negative. I get kind of bogged down. What's your impression, not to get off topic, what's your impression like reading the whole Bible? What's it like?
well, the Old Testament, I mean, I can condense the Old Testament down into like one sentence, which is like, you know, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength, or he will kill you. And maybe your friends and your neighbors too.
And also love your fellow Jew, but Gentiles are not even human beings. Don't worry about them.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really say that in the Bible. I mean, you know, that's more of a later development, I think. But Jesus was a Jew, you know. It's like, so these people that they're really down on Buddhism. I mean, what are your options? I mean, most of them will, if they got any religious temperament at all, they'll worship a deified Jew. Or, I mean, they can LARP as neo-pagans. You know, some of them might, you know, try to worship Odin or something. But that's, I mean, that's like a replica. It's like a recreation of a system that went extinct. You know, there is sort of guessing just based on scanty evidence of what it used to really be like. Or you can just be a spiritually comatose materialist.
Yeah. But like with Odin, they don't have like the teachings of Odin. They may have existed, but they're destroyed. We got like 6,000 pages of the Pali Sutras. We got lots of good, practical, wise advice from the Buddha. It's still in our hand.
Yeah. I mean, it's not anti-fascist or anything either. It's like Julius Evola wrote the Spirit of or the Doctrine of Awakening, and he called himself a super fascist, and he was very much in favor of Buddhism. In fact, it was reading some Buddhist text. It was after World War I. He was like an artillery officer during World War I, and he after the war ended, he was very depressed and borderline suicidal for a long time. And it was reading a Buddhist text that snapped him out of it and gave him some kind of meaning to his life and something to live for.
Oh, great. Was he Italian?
Yeah, he was Italian.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really, it's hard to say. I mean, a lot of the people that just bash Buddhism, they just really don't know what they're talking about, or the only exposure they've had to Buddhism is from the lefty stuff, which is, I mean, I bash that. I mean, you and I both bash that stuff because that's not Buddhism. That's just neo-Marxism with a little Buddhist flavoring at it. It's like neo-Marxists will just take over any religious system that they can and then just turn it into neo-Marxism. So it's like the leftist Buddhism with the rainbow flags and the queer Buddhism stuff, and then the Methodists with the rainbow flags and the queer Methodist stuff, and you know, all these other systems that have the rainbow flags and the queer religious stuff. They resemble each other more than they resemble the traditional conservative version of the religion that they supposedly are endorsing.
Yeah, I guess I have to have compassion for my Bitchute audience, because it's hard for them to discover what Buddhism is. They got this leftist Buddhism was really the opposite of what we believe.
Yeah, but then a lot of them seem to be kind of angry and probably think that something like hate or anger is good, you know, sort of. I mean, to some degree, you know, the Führer in Germany, you know, before World War II, you know, he kind of tapped into anger. You know, it was like getting people pissed off. You know, it helped. You know, it helped his message, so to speak. You know, it's like when people are pissed off with the way things are, you know, he can present something that they'll like better, supposedly. So, I mean, he kind of exploited that. But really, I mean, from the Buddhist point of view, anger and hate are just, you know, I mean, pretty much from the Christian point of view too. It's just that most people don't really follow their religion very well.
Yeah. Also, it might appeal to people to know that Buddhism is, you could call it elitist. Like you venerate the best, the brightest, the most spiritually evolved people as the leaders of your society.
Yeah, and that's what Evola was teaching. I mean, he didn't care what the normies were practicing. He was teaching that Buddhism is good for the elite, you know, and not the elite like the globalist people in Davos or whatever now. I mean, he's talking about like the truly superior men that
I
are
agree.
eventually going to rise up and take over. He thought that they should be Buddhists. And he was actually comparing like an arahant, like a fully enlightened Buddhist, to like the Nietzschean Superman, which
Yeah.
is pushing it a little bit, I think, but still.
Yeah, I think of the Arhants as the elite, and I think the opposite of that kind of elitism is equality. Like equality is a really negative idea that levels everybody. It's like mob rule. Equality is a really destructive thing. So I think elitism is good, and Buddhism has that elitism.
Yeah, well, a certain amount of equality is fine, but when it gets to equity, where it's like equality of outcome,
Yeah,
then
yeah,
it's
that's what I
just
mean.
like mandatory mediocrity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Equality of opportunity is fine, but that way the best rise to the top with equality of opportunity. But equality
Yeah,
of outcome is very negative and destructive and unnatural.
yeah, it's essentially communism.
Yeah, yeah. And Buddhism is not communism. Remember, we did a video with Ajahn put it down. We said communism has not been good for Buddhism historically.
No.
Destroys it.
Well, yeah, I mean, communism has not been good for any religious system that isn't communism itself. You have to have like a spiritually dead kind of religion, completely worldly religion, and that's what the leftist Buddhists in the West are trying to turn Buddhism into. Is just
Yeah.
it's essentially just another kind of Marxism.
Yeah, with a bit of mindfulness, be mindful during your Marxist practice, I guess.
Yeah, but what you're being mindful of is your white privilege or whatever.
Well, yeah, your
It's
intrinsic white supremacy, right? Your innate racism as a white
yeah.
person.
You have to be mindful of your racism and your white privilege and all that. So
I like to credit the Insight Meditation Society. They promote these ideas. They're like very big organization across the West, IMS.
yeah, and then they wind up rejecting like some of the most important basic aspects of Buddhism, like karma or renunciation or even enlightenment.
Yeah.
Even like nibbana or nirvana. They don't have any use for that. They just want to change the second noble truth so that desire isn't the only cause of suffering. It's also patriarchal oppression is a cause of suffering. They want to literally change the second noble truth. And the noble truths, the four noble truths, literally are Arya Satya, the Aryan truths. So a lot of your viewers are down on Buddhism, but I mean I'm equally down on like the leftist version of it.
A lot of them seem to be Christians that are down on Buddhism, actually calling us satanic. So, this is a minority of Christians. Like, why do these bad apple Christians troll on Bitchute? I mean, they can't speak for all Christians. Christians aren't all that rude,
Well, I mean, you're going to have, people that endorse certain religions without actually following it. Like a lot of Christians, they'll just think that all you got to do is just, say that Jesus is your savior and, believe in Jesus as your savior. And that's enough. You're going to go to heaven no matter how shitty of a person you are. Which, I mean, Buddhism doesn't teach that. I mean, you got to have some wisdom. You got to do some good and have some wisdom.
Yeah, you're in South Carolina. Do you, and I'm sure you're surrounded by a lot of Christians there. Do you encounter negative attitudes about Buddhism in South Carolina?
I've never come across it yet. Yeah, it's mainly, I mean, the people are real friendly and really nice, church-going Christian people, they take it seriously. Like my boss is a church-going Christian guy. He doesn't cuss, he's trying to tries to be a good person, tries to live up according to what the Bible says within reason. I mean, the Bible says you should just wander around and, give no thought for tomorrow, what you will eat, where you will sleep. And most Christians don't go that far. They don't like the part about gather not up your treasures upon the earth because, they got bills to pay and a family to support and all that. They're not ready to just take off wandering and casting out devils and healing the sick and all that. But still, I mean, they try to be good people and they're friendly and, people like me that I work with. And so, I mean, really, they just don't know anything about Buddhism and they have enough sense to know that, they really don't know what to say about it. So they just, they're just kind of shy about it, They know that I was a monk for 30 years, but they don't even know what to say. It's so foreign they've lived in this normie Southern Baptist existence, and it's just all uncharted territory beyond that.
You think with the internet they might learn a bit about the world and philosophy and know a bit about Buddhism? Like the Dalai Lama, he's really cool around the world,
Yeah, I suppose so. But yeah, if they know much about it, they've never shared any of that with me. They're mostly just kind of bashful about it and don't bring it up.
I can see the problem with my audience is that I release Buddhist videos, interviews with you and some of my older Buddhist videos and guided meditation. So I'm more in the face about Buddhism. So then they react against me, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, you got more of a mixed bag in your audience. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of my audience started off seeing me on your videos. So there is a lot of overlap. But I mean, you've probably Buddhists are people that are even interested or open-minded about Buddhism are probably a minority of your viewers, because you've also got like the fasci types, and also you've got the UFO people. So I guess those would be like the three main groups of people that follow you on your videos.
I've changed so much. Like I started regular videos practically every other day since 2011. It was all Buddhism at first, and then I got into some New World Order, and then UFOs, and then critical of Jewish power, and also Adolf Hitler, then really more heavily into extraterrestrials. So I really offended my audience. They kept changing all the time, so they got really upset with me. So now I've got a whole mixed bag audience.
Yeah. So my viewers, I mean, I do have like fascistic types, like people who genuinely endorse fascism and National Socialism, and people who don't have much use for the Hebrew ethnicity and so forth. But I mean, they're Buddhists, and they're generally relatively intelligent Buddhists, and they take seriously right speech and so forth. And so there's not nearly so much just raging and like name calling and sneering and stuff going on. In my
polite comments, right?
Plus, I'm mainly on YouTube rather than Bitchute. I'm on Bitchute also, but most of my viewers are on YouTube, and I guess YouTube's a little more polite than Bitchute. It's like Bitchute are the people that get kicked off of YouTube for being naughty or badly behaved or impolite or something.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I come to discover that on YouTube they're more impolite and intelligent, broad ranging ideas, where in Bitchute they're more rude. A lot of them are rude. I get some intelligent ideas on Bitchute as well, but and I basically am not on YouTube. That's my problem. I could get a lot more polite comments. I wish I was on YouTube more.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of effect this is going to have while we're criticizing a lot of your own viewers, but still, I mean, if you're going to make comments against Buddhism, at least you should understand what Buddhism teaches, especially Theravada Buddhism, because Brian's a Theravada Buddhist. You should at least know what it is that you're criticizing, so you can make intelligent criticisms rather than just say it's stupid or cringe or bullshit, commie chink bullshit, which is what one person referred to it. Which, first of all, it's not communist, because the communists exterminate, like the Khmer Rouge in communist China. Buddhism, there's a few monasteries left that are just there for tourism purposes, like the Shaolin Monastery. The tourists get herded through the Shaolin monasteries, and it's not really Chinese. It started in India, northern India, and then eventually spread to China, spread all through Asia at one point, and then it got pretty much wiped out farther west by the Muslims. But still, if you're going to criticize anything, really, you're going to criticize Christianity or Buddhism or Democrats or whatever it is, at least you should, inform yourself and know what it is that you're criticizing, so you can make intelligent criticisms that don't get shot down immediately by someone who actually does understand the subject.
Yeah, so for my audience watching, I recommend go to Pannobhasa's channel. It's linked below this video. Learn about some real Theravada Buddhism from Pannobhasa.
Yeah, the thing with my channel, though, is it's not really good for beginners, because some people they kind of complain a little bit. I try to watch your show, and you're using all this technical terms and stuff, and they can't follow along. And then eventually, after 10 or 15 minutes, they turn it off and start watching cat videos.
Yeah, it's true. I could recommend I'm with the Ajahn Chah tradition at foresangha.org, or Ajahn Soni speaks clear in English. I could put a link below this video for them as well.
Yeah, Ajahn Punadhammo does a lot of like live streams and videos and stuff too.
Yeah, he's good. I'll put a link, and we've done videos with him. I've been in touch with him recently. He's got a new cover to his Buddhist Cosmos book, really cool looking art on it now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so anything else on this, or should we move on to the next video?
Yeah, I suppose so. I've had my say.
Yeah, good. This one's not too long. People appreciate sort of average length short videos. So thank you kindly, pannobhasa. Appreciate the talk.
Yeah, thank you.